This is the Building Automation Monthly Podcast with Phil Zito, episode 145. Hey folks, Phil Zito here, and welcome to episode 145 of the Building Automation Monthly Podcast. It's been a couple weeks, and I am really excited to be back behind the mic. I was recently on a couple week vacation down to Houston, and then I got back and my podcast mic broke. So now everything is working again, and I'm back behind the mic recording several episodes because I'm about to go on another vacation. Yes, the joys of business ownership. You get to work 14, 16-hour days and take a couple weeks off every once in a while. So, alrighty. With that being said, though, like I mentioned, my name's Phil Zito, and I'm the CEO of Building Automation Monthly. If you have never listened to the podcast before, well, welcome. I am really excited to have you here. How the podcast generally works is that we cycle through 4 different topic areas. And today we will be talking about the 5 ways to optimize your building automation business in 2019 and beyond. So it'll be a business topic. Next week, we'll talk about a sales topic. Then the week after that, we will talk about a technical topic. And then the week after that, we'll talk about an IT topic. So that's what you can expect. I realize that this is a new year, and some of you are going to be new to the podcast. You're just coming into building automation and you're looking to grow your knowledge. If so, welcome. For the rest of you loyal listeners who have been with us since the beginning, I just want to say thank you and Happy New Year. So let's dive into today's topic: 5 ways to optimize your building automation system business in 2019 and beyond. So why would you want to optimize your building automation system business, and why is it going to matter to you? Well, as I was doing my planning for calendar year 19, and I was thinking about what am I going to do as a business to both grow and better serve our existing customers. And I was sitting there, honestly, watching the stock market go up and down, thinking, man, is this the sign that we're going to have a recession? Is all the construction work going to dry up? Should I start shifting over to owner courses? And I started to think about how could I optimize my business? And I'm sitting there, we're driving back from Houston. I think it was in Arkansas, which if you've ever driven through Arkansas, in between the major cities, there's not a lot there that I'm aware of. At least maybe some of you who live in Arkansas will tell me otherwise. But there just wasn't a lot to look at. So I started thinking about optimizing my business, which then led me to thinking about what would an optimized building automation business look like? Because it seems like more and more competition is entering the market. It seems like everyone and their mom can go out and buy a controls product. And for those of you who have been in here for a while, you've went from having maybe 3 to 5 competitors on a bid to having maybe a dozen or more competitors on a bid. So what do you do about that? How do you address that issue? Well, my idea, having been an operations manager in charge of a fairly large P&L and having done a lot of different things in BAS, is to have an optimized BAS business. But what is an optimized BAS business? Well, I look at an optimized BAS business, or any business in general, as being 3 things. First, it's profitable. The reality is I see a lot of folks. So I'm technically in the internet business space, right? Because all of our training is online. Our web presence is online. We primarily market through our podcast, through our posting, through our email list. That's our primary way of marketing. That and a lot of word of mouth, a lot of repeat customers and customers telling others about our business. So for us, when I look around and I look at other internet related businesses, that meaning businesses that primarily are existing online or utilizing online as their main distribution and not in-person classes, things like that. As I look at that, I realize that a lot of these businesses are not profitable. They spend so much money on marketing and advertising that they are not profitable, whereas our profit margin is very, very high. And that is something, as I remember looking back at physical businesses, back when I was running an ops team of right around 22 people, about I think it was like $60 million worth of projects, about 120 plus projects going on at any given time. And I looked at our average profit margin, and it was somewhere between 10 to 20%, give or take. If you're not profitable, if you don't have enough profit, then when business dries up or you have slippage on jobs or you want to make an entry into another vertical market, you don't have that flexibility. Having profit gives you cash. Having cash allows you to make entry into other markets. It gives you flexibility to weather down markets. That way you're holding on to your key staff. It gives you the ability to make shifts in your strategic direction. So profitability, in my opinion, is the most important aspect of an optimized business. But it's not just enough to be profitable. Anyone can be profitable on a job by going and just undercutting and then under delivering. But you can only do that so much. I mean, I remember a job back when I was in Dallas, and this guy beat us out on this commercial office building. And he went and he was like 60, 80 grand less than us, which on a multi-story commercial office building, that's a big chunk of change to be less than a fellow contractor. And what had happened is he went and did the parts, but did not do the smarts, meaning he went and provided supervisory devices and field controllers, but did no programming. His view was that he didn't have to program any of the terminal units. He was just going to go and install these terminal units, install the supervisory device, and would program them on the tenant finish outs. That's how he was able to be so low. Needless to say, the contracting tier got really, really pissed at him, and the owner got really pissed. He did not have repeatable work. And the third aspect of an optimized building automation system is that it's growable, meaning that you can grow your business. You may be able to be profitable, and you may be able to have some repeatable work with a set of customers in a specific vertical market. But if that vertical market is not growing, if it's not shrinking, if there are no other customers in your area that are of that vertical market, you have nowhere to grow. You have no pivot points. So that's a really important thing to think about when we're talking about optimizing our building automation business. So how do we go about optimizing our building automation business? Well, we do it through 5 steps. So step number 1 is that we want to identify and eliminate non-growth, non-strategic business. Now, there is a reason why I put this first. For a business owner, this is the most uncomfortable thing to do. All business is good business in a business owner's eyes, but that's not true. Not all business is good business. However, when you're new, you don't want to go and eliminate business because you have this scarcity mindset. You're like, okay, what if I go and get rid of this and I can't replace it with something else? I'm taking a risk. Now, I've learned from experience that this is not often the case, but I still, to this day, even find myself falling into this pattern where we would have some products or some services that are not profitable or just are not growable. So for example, if I were to do in-person training traveling around the United States, that is not a scalable business. There are only so many hours in the day, and if I take time to go and travel and train people, then that is time I'm not producing courses. And in my opinion, and based on my experience with our almost 4,000 students now, we get much better results from going and doing online training, which folks can revisit 3 to 4 to 10 or a dozen times, versus doing a one-shot 5-day class where I try to cram through osmosis as much as can be into that person's head. So you can see if I was traveling around doing that, I wouldn't be able to work on the business, wouldn't be able to grow it strategically. So that would be a non-growth, non-strategic thing. And thus, I've never went down that path of doing in person. I'm thinking about potentially doing in person here in the Milwaukee area, but it would be a very strategic choice. It would be where I am going and creating a training program and recording that training program and facilitating that recording through an in-person. So I'm getting kind of a double whammy. I'm getting profitability by students being in the classroom, but I'm also creating a repeatable asset. Now, you may think to yourself, okay, Phil, that's great. What does this have to do with my building automation business? How can I apply what you're talking about right now? Well, the first thing you need to do is you need to categorize your business. You need to look at your strategic business that, maybe you're working with a hospital that has a capital plan, and strategically that capital plan is going to result in a couple $1 million of work within the next 5 years. You need to look at growing sectors. Maybe there was just a grant or some sort of funding to a school district. And so for the next 5 years, it is strategic and it's growing for you to engage with that school district. And then you need to look at shrinking. Maybe an industry is leaving your area. I mean, we think back to the Michigan area where it was largely automotive, but then there was that massive shrink where a lot of automotive left. So you need to categorize your business, understand what is strategic, what is growing, and what is shrinking. Now, here's the painful part of step one, is you need to develop transition and closeout plans. So you need to understand how to transition away from those shrinking industries, from those shrinking customers, and you need to have ways to close out those accounts. And then finally, you need to develop account management and maintenance plans. Now, what do I mean by this? I mean that you have to understand what accounts are strategic, what accounts are growing. And when I say accounts, I don't just necessarily mean owner accounts. I also mean contractors. I also mean engineers, etc. So you need to understand that. And then you have to have a plan in place to manage those accounts as well as maintain those accounts. There's nothing like going and finally capturing some work that's going to be strategic to your business growth and then deciding that you're never going to visit that for another 2 years while one of your competitors is there servicing, talking to the director or VP of facilities at least once a week. And then you wonder why that quote, quote, strategic opportunity never develops into closed business for you. It's because you didn't follow through with proper maintenance. Now we're going to shift completely from our identification and elimination of our non-growth and non-strategic business, and we're going to move to another super duper exciting topic, which is documenting your processes. I can't even say this with a straight face because, to be totally honest, this bores the hell out of me. It's funny because I get a lot of folks who think I am very well organized and that I document stuff and, oh my gosh, you do so much stuff. How do you get it done? You must be so well organized. Oh, if you only knew how much I fly by the seat of my pants on some stuff. The reality is that documenting your processes is something I still to this day struggle with. It is not something that is exciting to me, but it is something that I realize is necessary. And so I do it begrudgingly. Is that the right word? Yeah, I think so. So I do this and I preach this in our courses, not because it's something I like to do, but it's something that I know has a disproportionate result on the success of my business and on yours. Back when I was taking this $60 million operations team from shambles of just complete unprofitability to being quite a profitable business unit, I quickly identified that there were no processes. I mean, sure, the business had processes, just no one was utilizing the processes. And this is why it's so important for you to document your processes. The first set of processes that you need to document is turnover processes. This is something that we hammer heavily in our BAS Startup and Checkout, in our BAS Design course, as well as our Scoping and Estimating courses, is the ability to turn over documentation from sales to operations. This is your first area of major profit loss. I've seen projects literally turned over by sales, and then the operations folks didn't think to check that they were utilizing the proper documents, and they started to develop and order material based off of documents that were DD documents, and the actual project was in the CD phase, and the documents were completely inaccurate. That is just poor business practices right there. And it could have all been dealt with through proper turnover processes, a proper release to operations, a proper sales review, a proper review of the actual documentation. And it's so simple to do. I know it seems like a pain in the ass. It's not exactly someone's favorite thing to do, but it has, as I mentioned, a disproportionate effect, meaning the amount of effort you put in has a much higher return on investment than pretty much anything else I've seen. The reality is folks will talk about, you'll see this on LinkedIn, you'll see this on Facebook, and they'll focus in on the little bitty nuances of technology. But how often is it that you see folks on LinkedIn or Facebook posting about processes, posting about turnover, posting about the things that actually have a multi-percentage effect on profitability of projects? It's very rare that you see anyone talking about this, because it's just so much easier to focus on the nuance of technologies versus this kind of vague, cloudy idea of processes. So the second process you really need to focus in on documenting is your execution process. Now, this is something we focus extremely heavily on in our BAS Startup and Checkout course, where we go from literally document turnover all the way to wiring up controls, installing controls, setting up supervisory devices, and then doing functional testing and checkout and commissioning and closing out a project, literally from start to finish. And it's full of checklists and process documents, which is incredibly important. I can't tell you how many large businesses that I've worked with who have no form of execution processes. And then they wonder why they get mixed results on every project. And it seems like some project managers get great results, whereas others get poor results. And yes, I will openly admit that it may have a little bit to do with the capabilities and what's the word I'm looking for here? I don't know. Just the capabilities and quality of the project manager. There's another word that I was looking for that it just isn't there for some reason. I don't know why. But in reality, even a competent, that's the word I was looking for, semi-competent project manager with great processes will outperform an excellent project manager with no processes. So you've got your execution processes, and those are incredibly important. Those are things like actually making sure contractors are lined out, making sure that you're doing proper point-to-point checkout, making sure you're properly going through the as-built and closeout processes. And finally, we have our administrative processes. These are extremely important yet often missed. You know, I cringe every time I see someone who is billable at $100+ an hour ordering material. I remember when I first took over that $60 million P&L, and I saw our lead programmer on the phone with the material order line ordering parts. And I was like, what the you know what word I was going to use there. What are you doing? You are billable at $100+ an hour, and you're on the parts line on hold ordering parts? What the heck? These are things that we don't often think about. We don't often think about, are we using the most efficient person? And when I say efficient does not just mean, I'm sure that programmer with all the experience he had was efficient in going and ordering the parts, okay? But he wasn't efficient when it came to his impact on the job, because I was paying someone $100 an hour to literally read through a bill of materials to someone else on a phone, versus I have an admin that's paid $15 to $20 an hour. And, you know, nowadays that's probably like $40 an hour, $30 an hour. And when I say these numbers, I'm counting in the medical costs, the total weighted cost of an employee, not just their salary, but the total weighted cost and impact on the business. So instead of paying someone $20, $30 an hour, I'm paying someone $100 an hour to place material orders, or to follow up on billing, or to follow up on documents. That just is poor business and poor processes. That is something you really should look at. And it is an immediate area that will generate anywhere from 0.5% to 2% profitability increase on your projects. If you want to see a 0.5% to a 2% profitability increase on your projects, simply go and establish administrative processes if you don't already have them. It is a massively disproportionate result on your business. Finally, step number 3. Put people in the right roles. So there's this old saying, I think it was from Good to Great, where they say put the right people on the bus and then put the people in the right seats or something like that. I'm probably totally butchering the quote. But there is some truth to that. I've seen where programmers, just due to the fact that we didn't have enough people on the job, were outgoing and doing point-to-point checkout on wiring. And I'm sitting there like, what the heck is going on? That's why if you haven't already done it, it is incredibly important that you identify the work you do. So identify what kind of work you do. Do you work mainly for hospitals? Do you mainly do service work? Do you mainly do install? Do you just simply install packaged equipment? What do you do? Then from there, determine the weaknesses that you have currently in your business in regards to the work you do. And then finally, identify the strengths in your business. Now, once you have identified your weaknesses and your strengths, and you've identified the work that you do, then look at your existing talent pool. Who do you have on your jobs? Who do you have on your bench? What work are they doing? Where could you move them around? How could you potentially be structured in such a way that you will be optimally using people for the type of work you do? This is a multifaceted topic, and it really depends on the type of work you do, the geography you're in, and just a multitude of factors. So I can't tell you exactly what to do because that's specific to each situation. However, if you identify the work you do, you determine your weaknesses and your strengths, then you can go and you can adequately assign people or bring new people on board to make sure that you're optimally executing your work. Which brings us to step 4, which is to measure your key performance indicators. This is something that the larger companies tend to do really well, and I seem to get mixed results from mid to small size companies. Some of them do it amazing, others not so much. Some of them don't even know what the word KPI means. So KPI is a key performance indicator. And there's really 2 types of KPIs. There are leading KPIs and lagging KPIs. Leading KPIs are KPIs that are going to indicate success, whereas lagging KPIs are KPIs that are results from an action. So for example, your leading KPIs would be things like how many calls have you done to a customer? How many people what is their contra rate? Those kind of things. Those are leading KPIs, whereas lagging KPIs would be executed margin, close rate, etc. Now, in an ideal world, you're going to figure out the exact leading KPIs that are going to result in the best impact to your business, but this takes amount of time. So ideally, you're going to look at your lagging KPIs first. You're going to look at your executed margin on project. You're going to look at your close rate percentage of your salespeople. You're going to look at accuracy of execution versus estimated costs. And then based on these lagging KPIs, you're going to use your powers of deduction to figure out what is causing these KPIs to be not where you want them to be. So for example, and I'm just pulling a number out of my butt here, but let's just say that you want executed margin of 15%, but you're at executed margin of 12. And you identify that there is a difference in the actual estimated margin on the project and executed margin. Now it's your job as a business owner to figure out what is causing that slippage, what is causing that difference. Once you identify that difference, then you have a gap. And once you've identified that gap, that is when we move to step 5, which is train to your gaps. And that's where our business specializes. We specialize in helping businesses identify and close the skill set gaps that they have in their team that are impacting their profitability. So we identify those gaps and we apply our training programs to close those gaps so that businesses are able to execute their work more profitably, They're able to do it more efficiently, so they're able to do more work with less people, and they are able to make sure that their business is profitable. So once we've determined those gaps, then we measure our baseline. So let's say that one of the gaps is that the technicians just, by and large, you've got a couple that are massively less efficient at installation and point-to-point checkout than the rest of your team. So you measure that baseline and you establish a mean, and a mean meaning the average result that you want to have for that efficiency measure. Once you've defined that efficiency measure, then and only then can you identify aspects in which you're going to train to develop that measure. So for example, you identify that a technician is poor at installing and doing point-to-point checkout. So that's when you go and you put that technician through our BAS startup and checkout course. They learn how to do the proper install processes. They learn how to do proper point-to-point checkout. They learn how to do it efficiently, and they have a clear defined process on how to do that. Then because of that, you've done training and you remeasure on the next project and you see their efficiency increase. Now, granted, there are some people who, even after training, they just don't have the aptitude. But in my experience, that is much smaller number than folks realize. A lot of folks, they just don't train effectively because, let's face it, you're probably, if I'm talking to you right now, not in the business to do training. That's all we do here at Building Automation Monthly is train. That's all we do. Now, your business is most likely to sell and install controls and service controls. That is probably your focus, and it's all you do. So that is why you're probably not as effective at training as we are. Maybe you are. Maybe you've got some mystical, great abilities to train, but the reality is, based on what we've seen from all of our customers, that is not their focus. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just the reality. You can only be good at so many things, as I've learned throughout my years trying to be a lot of different things. Now let's take another example, right? You've got salespeople who they estimate jobs, but their estimates are never accurate to what is actually executed. They're always off on their numbers. Their labor's either too low, their material estimates are wrong, they're not factoring in the proper margin or the proper subcontractor costs. What do? Well, for example, you put them through our scoping and estimating course, which teaches them how to properly go through the project documents, how to scope a project, and how to estimate that project. Then once they've done that, then you train that. So that's training, right? And you remeasure them on the next couple estimates. Are their estimates more accurate? Are they going and properly estimating the project so that there's that loss, or that loss of profitability has shrunk? That is what you need to do. And this is something that I see top tier companies doing all the time, is training to their gaps. We have customers who literally, when someone is hired on, they go through one of our training tracks, and before they ever go out on a job, they've gone through 3 to 4 of our courses so that they are properly trained on the job that they are expected to do. So let's recap real quick. So what is an optimized building automation business? It's one that is profitable, one that is repeatable, and one that is growable. And there's 5 ways to optimize your building automation business. The first is to identify and eliminate non-growth, non-strategic business. The second is to document your process. The third is to put your people in the right roles. The fourth is to measure your key performance indicators. And the fifth is to train to your gaps. Thank you so much for being here and listening to this podcast. I'm really excited to be back behind the mic. And in next week's podcast episode, we're going to talk through how to manage and grow your accounts. We're going to look at what account management is. We're going to look at the ways in which you can implement account management. And we're going to go through a 6-step process for practicing account management. If you've never been trained in account management, or maybe you feel like you could be doing better with account management, then this episode is going to be really important for you. And for those of you who are technicians or engineers and you're like, yeah, I'm not in sales, Phil, I'm going to skip this. Don't, because some of the best salespeople I've ever met are technicians who have credibility with the customer and who, by practicing proper account management, can ensure that they are never laid off. They are never sent home in the winter. They always have work because they are creating their own work. So trust me, this is a skill that is invaluable, whether you are in a sales role or in a technical role. So with that being said, I encourage you to go to buildingautomationmonthly.com/145, where you can find more resources related to this podcast episode, and you can find a link to our online training programs, which are guaranteed to increase the profitability and proficiency of your building automation business. Thanks a ton for listening, and I'll talk to you again next week. Take care.